If you think the ties between the Israeli government, the United States government, and organized crime is really complicated and hard to prove, you wouldn't be wrong. It is a super convoluted web by design. And so today, we're going to break down some of those details and try to explain it to you in as much detail as possible without putting you to sleep. Watch this episode of One Nation Under Blackmail by Whitney Webb. This is an ongoing book discussion. We're going to get into the bulk of chapter 3, and it's going to get deep, but the devil is in the details. Let's go. Now, again, we've been covering this book, One Nation Under Blackmail. This is volume 1 by Whitney Webb. It is a very deep and very scholarly-like book with tons and tons of names coming at you at a million miles an hour. And yes, it gets very, very complex and possibly could be a snooze fest. I do my job, I do my best job to try to make it entertaining for you so that you can actually follow along. Some of you have said I do a really good job of making it entertaining, but when I read large passages of names being fired at you over and over and over again, you just tend to check out. By the way, that's exactly why it works. This is exactly why America just falls asleep and says, whatever, it can't be, if I can't follow the logic, football's on in 10 minutes, I'm going to go watch football. I get it. What I want you to get from this chapter, if you're willing to stay with it, and I will do my best to provide momentary breaks from the reading and highlight the key parts. There's large sections of this chapter I'm going to have to skip over just for the sake of brevity because you'll fall asleep if you try to follow all the names. But I'm going to highlight things like when Life magazine or Time magazine or some major publication in America has covered the corruption between Israel, the United States, and organized crime. It has happened. It has been reported by reporters over and over again. The problem is America is lazy, including myself. We just don't want to have to take a college level course to figure out what's going on in corruption. All I want you to get out of today's reading, if you will stay with me, is, and I would love for you to stay with me, by the way, so I can get the watch time, so I can get the credits, so we can build a great channel, because education is important. By the way, I'm going to drop an affiliate link to this video somewhere for you to be able to buy a copy of One Nation Under Blackmail from Amazon.com to get a copy of this book for yourself and read along. And I would love for you to get a copy of the book, not only to support the author who's done an amazing work and deserves money for the book that they made, but it'll cost you no extra money, by the way, to use my affiliate link. And I need to sell at least 3 books in the next 6 months off my affiliate link. Again, doesn't cost you a thing, but by buying the book through me, I get a little spiff and it makes me allowed to continue doing it. But I have to have so many sales. I think it's only 3 in a matter of months. So you can do it. Buy a copy of the book, please, on my affiliate link, which I will drop somehow in this video somewhere for you so that you can actually click on it. And in the show notes, it'll be there as well. So you can get a copy of the book yourself. If you even think about it, like 5 or 6 people have already bought a copy of this book. Too bad I didn't have the affiliate link then. Anyways, point being, let's get right into the book series. And I'm going to start this reading today on this chapter by jumping to the very end. And because I think the way that this is summarized at the very end is actually the way that I want to caveat the beginning of the reading. I'll show you in just a second what I'm talking about. There's all the footnotes, by the way. This thing is heavily, heavily footnoted. So we're going to start here, and I'm going to work back to the first place where it turns blue. That's where I left off last time. When you see it turn blue and I'm working through the pages backwards, all that stuff you're going to see on the screen flying by is stuff that I'm going to read to you. So yeah, it could be a snooze fest, but I try to do my best to make it a little entertaining. Let's start with this conclusion over here. I don't know if my fingers are pointing the right way. I've got a reversed mirror thing on my camera. Okay, who knows? All right. This is the concluding part of this chapter. Such conclusions are at best speculative. Oh my God. Are you meaning that you're going to read to me for the better part of an hour and you're going to tell me that pretty much everything you just said is speculative? Yes, unfortunately, that's what I'm going to tell you. And that's what she's telling you. The conclusions are at best speculative. Yet, what is certain and undeniable is that much of the wartime OSS, this is a precursor of the CIA, and CIA, as well as Israel's intelligence services, operated in close proximity to and were effectively indistinguishable from organized crime. That is the key takeaway. When you start to check out, and I think you probably will start to check out, but bear with me. I'm going to do my best to try to keep you engaged. All you need to pay attention to is how many times the name organized crime, mobster, well-known mobster in organized crime, is associated with politicians and governments and Israel and the United States and Italy and all these countries and banking associations, including major banks that you will recognize in America. These banks started with organized crime, criminals, and organizations. So all you have to pay attention to, instead of trying to follow and if you want to follow the logic, by the way, buy a copy of the book and you can follow exactly the names, and you can take notes, and you can study, and you can pass the test with 100% if you want to. It's all there and it's all laid out. But if you just want to keep a high level thought process, pay attention to how many times you hear mobsters' names in association with, or criminal organizations in association with, the sale of arms, arming Israel, the United States support of arming Israel for their independence, us using drug money, mobster money, all these different places, and all of the elites of the world and governments all over the place, including intelligence agencies like the MI5 or MI6 or CIA, from all the different intelligence agencies, Mossad from Israel, all of them in bed with each other and in bed with organized crime and in the banking industry to move money, guns, and drugs to fund their wars, which, by the way, the banks make money by funding both sides of the war. That is something we'll probably cover in an episode of Deep Devils, another series I do, where we talk about the banking institutes, which make money by lending money to both sides of in conflict. And then when both sides of the war are done decimating each other, you owe those banks tons of money, and they'll help you rebuild your infrastructure at a high rate of interest. And it's great for the bankers. Fund both sides and give money to both sides and let them beat the hell out of each other. And then you just sit back and rake in the dough for the rest of their lives as they rebuild their countries. That is part of how things work. And I realize it's not as cool and sexy as football. All right. So again, at best, a lot of this is speculation, but if you don't catch the number of times that politicians, governments, and mobsters are all interconnected to the point that you cannot tell who is the mobster, who is the government official, who is the good guys, and who's the bad guys, there's a reason why you can't, because they're indistinguishable from one another. All right, let's get right into it. Let's see if we can get this done in less than an hour, because I don't want to put you to sleep. It is bedtime. Watch this at bedtime. It'll help you go to sleep. Get some NyQuil. Put it on. Put some good music. Listen to this until you fall out, and then come back and watch it again so I can get even more watch time. That'd be great. Don't forget to buy a copy of this book at the end, by the way. All right. I talk fast. With high-level connections secured through his position as a delegate for the World Zionist Congress, Rosenbaum, that's a name we're going to hear a lot, set up his Geneva Bank International Credit Bank, or ICB. ICB regularly moved money from Mossad, so Israeli Mossad, and for Israel's Ministry of Defense. The British Sunday Times, which is a major British paper, right? The British Sunday Times later reported in 1975 that as much as 90% of the Israeli Defense Ministry's external budget flowed through Rosenbaum's banks. Okay. So again, now keep in mind, when we're talking about fighting wars and arming people with illegal arms, and that illegal money and guns and drugs and everything that funds these operations flow through major banks. You don't think the banks know what's happening? You don't think the banks know where the money's coming from? You don't think the banks help shield people from being able to have to identify where the money is coming from and being transferred to? They know damn well what's going on. That's the high level thing you need to keep in mind. The people at the banks are themselves helping launder money, helping hide money, helping keep the identities of these people in offshore accounts, and all of that shit. What it tends to make you check out. All you need to pay attention to is they're all figuratively in bed with each other. And if you go to the Epstein connection, literally in bed with each other. But we'll go. Epstein's going to come up, by the way. Epstein's going to come up. And again, this is all, in my opinion, forming the basis of what happened with Charlie Kirk in the end. But that's my opinion. I'll try to make those connections when I can. Every time Charlie Epstein comes up, I'm going to remind you, why do I keep saying Charlie Epstein? Every single time Jeffrey Epstein comes up, we're going to bring up Charlie Kirk. It's like I've so connected in my brain Jeffrey Epstein and Charlie Kirk and how I think they're connected that every single time I'm thinking about it, my brain goes to Charlie Epstein. That's how connected I feel like these stories are. So when you hear Jeffrey Epstein's name, this is why I transfigure it in my head and say Charlie Epstein. Stop saying that, because I'm burning it in my brain. All right. So 90% of the Israeli Defense Ministry moved through Rosenbaum's bank. It also moved money for organized crime. There you go. High level thing. The bank that moves money for Israel's defense is also moving money for organized crime. What a surprise. And again, all speculation, but the names are all there. All the people go to bed with each other. All the people go to dinner with each other. All the people have photos with each other's families together, because there is an indistinguishable connection between organized crime, the banking industry, and governments. That's what it's basically telling you in this book's opinion, and probably mine. Opinion, though. In 1967, expose in Life magazine, this is why I highlighted this, in Life magazine, a lot of people would trust Life magazine as a major reputable thing. When we see things broken in Rolling Stone, we pay attention. When we see it in Life, we pay attention. When we see it in Newsweek, we pay attention. Life magazine. In 1967, an expose in Life magazine fingered the ICB as the recipient of large sums of money skimmed off by the mob from casinos they owned in Las Vegas, the Caribbean, and elsewhere. So again, a major reporter in Life magazine made a tie that the mob own or skims money and launders it essentially through banks of Rosenbaum's banks in the United States, the ICB and other banking systems. And so just keep speculation, but it's been reported by lots of different reporters. Those reporters, by the way, if they have too many connections, end up having accidents, car accidents, or they kill themselves with a switchblade knife across their neck or something. Unfortunate things happen to reporters if they make it too clear for Americans. That's the best part. If you keep it super confusing and everybody gets tuned out and watch football, nothing's going to happen. If you make it really, really clear for people where they can follow the connection and go, that motherfucker, yeah, that's when that person usually ends up dead. All right, so overseeing the complex chains of the interbank relations and transfer chains that enabled this hot money to flow around the globe was a series of banking institutions controlled by Mayor Lansky frontmen. The setup was essentially as follows: casino skim, along as well as profits generated from the drug trade and other organized crime other organized crime rackets. My brain is moving faster than my mouth. Was moved into two key offshore banks, the Bank of World Commerce, BWC, and Atlas Bank. You're going to hear a lot about Atlas Bank, I think, as well. The latter of which was a subsidiary of Rosenbaum's ICB. So again, Atlas Bank, Rosenbaum, ICB, the same kind of thing, the bank. And again, by the way, these banks and these companies always make smaller companies and shell companies and stuff like that to hide the money. It's shell companies because they're literally playing a shell game with the money so that you get confused, because Americans will check out if it gets too, I don't understand. I thought it was supposed to be this bank that did it. Yeah, they own 5 banks down lower. And if you don't follow the trail back up to who owns it at the top, then you're just like, it's not the right bank. It's not the same bank. I got football on. And I'm saying that because I fall into it as well. I spent the majority of my life asleep, and in a large part, I'm still asleep because I don't want to have to have a doctorate thesis in how banks move money. All you needed is the high level thing, so that when you see things like Charlie Kirk happen, you go, I bet you that was an assassination by governments. That's all you need to come out of it, because that's what I'm thinking. That's an assassination by governments. Who was he pissing off that had money tied into what he was saying? That's what I would say pay attention to. All right. Overseeing the complex. Okay, we already got that. The funds would then be moved to accounts held by ICB in Geneva, where they would be converted into loans and investments to complete the money laundering loop. As will be discussed shortly, some of these funds may have been used to finance real estate investments that were made by people connected to American and Israeli intelligence. It gets convoluted. Money laundering through banks, and then they use it to buy real property, and those real property investments are made by American and Israeli intelligence industries or agents. That's where it gets, and yeah, it's complex. I get it. It's complex. Just start to pay attention to the names in the mob and government, who all seem to know each other and do business deals with each other. The organizer of Atlas on behalf of ICB was Sylvain Ferdman, probably got that name pronounced right. The expose in Life magazine described Ferdman as a Swiss citizen who is an international banker and economist, before adding that, quote, U.S. authorities have marked Ferdman as a fugitive, accused of interfering with the federal inquiry into the skimming racket. So again, this person involved in the banking industry has been under investigation by U.S. authorities for skimming and racketeering and all those things, or the skimming racket. I probably made skimming racketeering two different things. The skimming racket. Working alongside Ferdman and Rosenbaum was a coterie of Lansky being a mobster, closest allies. Sitting on the board of ICB itself was Ed Levinson and John Pullman. Levinson, who was partnered with Lansky in the Miami International Airport Hotel, ran the mob-controlled Fremont Hotel Casino in Las Vegas. By the way, Fremont Street is a fun place to visit. That's just an aside. That's my way of keeping this a little interesting. Go to Fremont Street in Vegas. That's my favorite place to hang out. Totally an aside to keep you awake. Are you with me? All right, let's go back to the Fremont Hotel Casino in Vegas. Levinson was also tight with Clifford Jones, the lieutenant governor of Nevada. So again, all you need to pay attention. These bankers who keep being involved in mob money and skimming from casinos and moving through banks somehow now all of a sudden are tied in with governors of Nevada between 1947 and 1954, who was also an alleged associate of Mayor Lansky, a mobster. So again, all you need at the high level is that, how come you will repeatedly see government officials all the way up through every branch of the government involved with mobsters and illegal activities and money laundering and also like that. Even when our government is punishing them, they're still in bed with the government officials at all levels of government. And that's my key takeaway. And try to summarize this chapter. Israel Oil Ventures expanded its capacities considerably in 1960. Yeah, we're skipping ahead a bit. You'd have to read the whole chapter, buy a copy of the book with my affiliate link so I can get a little bit of credit for that. I do get a little spiff from it. It doesn't cost you anything more. Anyways, when it purchased Israel America Oil Company. Yes, Israel and the United States have been in bed with each other financially and in partnership and in helping each other with these agendas for a long, long time. Anybody who wants to stand in the way between Israel and America's partnership and the deals that it got made have put themselves in grave danger. That's one of the key takeaways you need to put in. United States and Israel have been in bed with each other for forever, and they have financial ties that cannot be separated, including with the mob. And if you piss off people with a lot of money, bad things happen. Key takeaway. So an oil venture that was intimately tied to organized crime via its holding in another oil firm, Rimrock Tidelands. A subsidiary of Rimrock Tidelands, Rimrock International. So they love these subsidiaries because the further it gets down, you just check out. Rimrock Tidelands now owns Rimrock International, which is going to get further down. They're going to have more shell companies, and you're going to lose track, and you're going to go watch football. And again, I beat the hell out of that. I like football. I got baseball season coming up though, right? So anyways, and not the season. Playoffs. I'm trying to keep it interesting. Let's move back. All right. I'm side tangenting too much. This was because Rimrock International's managing director was Santo Sorge. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing Sorge right. Who was described in a Senate report as one of the most important mafia leaders. The Senate recognizes people involved in banking as being mafia leaders, mobsters. Pay attention to the high level thing. Even our Senate recognizes that members of mobs are involved with the banks. The mob is tied with the banks and with the Israeli government and with the United States government and with the Israeli intelligence and United States intelligence. It's horrible. All right. And liaison between American and Sicilia mafia clans. Intra Bank was formed in 1951 by Yusuf Bedis. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, a Christian Palestinian refugee who had been born into a prominent banking family. Just over a decade later, what began as a modest operation ballooned into a sprawling empire, at which point Bedis forged agreements with leading American banks that included Bank of America, bet you've heard of that one, Chase Manhattan, probably heard of that one, and Bedis then placed branches of Intra Bank in the world's important hotspots for hot money, London, Geneva, the Caribbean. At home, in Lebanon, Intra held 20% of the country's total deposits and 56% of the country's banking assets. There was also a deep relationship between Intra Bank and illicit activities of all types. The bank involved with illegal activities of all types. And it is what did they say? Forged agreements with leading American banks. Bank of America, Chase Manhattan. These banks still are prominent today, founded with banks that are doing business with mobsters. So have those ties been severed, or do they all know damn well that illegal money moves to their banks? I would argue probably the latter, but that's just me, and it's speculative, which is why we end the chapter with speculative at best, but it seems be logical that they all know each other. So this was from this report. Smugglers of all sorts availed themselves of Intrabank's services. Smugglers of all sorts availed themselves with Intrabank's services. It was a prime depository for many of the world's leading arms traffickers who received financing from Lebanese traders for illegal weapon sales in the southern Arabian Peninsula, Yemen and Aden, Cyprus, Sudan, Nigeria, Rhodesia, South Africa, and the Kurdish communities in the Middle East. Wealthy Arabs with too many petrodollars on their hands, looking for savvy banks in the region to look after their wealth, fattened its deposits further. Lebanon was prized with a haven for cash for anybody with a balance to hide. A haven for cash for anybody with a balance to hide. Yes, the banks help hide money when they know it's illegal and it's for illegal activities. They help hide who owns it, who's investing. Hey, it's controversial. I mean, it's confidential. You don't get to know who's investing in our bank. That's confidential, sir. You're not allowed to know who's moving money through our bank, because it would look really bad if you knew why that money was moving through our bank in such a large amount. And by the way, if we just take a little 1 to 3% spiff off the top for moving the illegal money, we become fat and our CEO gets to make another yacht or another big house for their kids. But that's another thing. All right. So it basically said a haven for cash for anybody with a balance to hide, U.S. tax evaders, oil-rich sheiks who wanted to lay something by for their rainy day of revolution, and assorted racketeers from or purveyors of stolen or smuggled wealth from all over the world, observed Life magazine in 1967. And there's a footnote. If you want to go find the exact Life magazine article that is cited, and a reporter covered all this shit, and America just goes, oh, I don't understand and I don't care. And I get it. I was one of them. You have to get old like me to give a shit. Most people who are young have better things to do. Although I guess the young are the activists, so maybe I'm wrong about that. But the point being is that most of us check out. There's a small percentage of people who actually want to do something. And I don't mean violence, for frick's sake. I'm not advocating violence. Don't you twist that shit. Don't you twist it. All right. Naturally, this sort of environment made Intra Bank an attractive financial institution for the CIA. Oh, wait a minute. Let me break that down. What the author says. I didn't say it. The author said, gee, a bank that's good at hiding people's investments in the bank and moving illegal money for mobsters becomes attractive to the CIA. Huh. That seems weird. It's speculation, but she thinks it makes it attractive to the CIA. And the bank helped transform Beirut into a core hub for the agency, i.e. CIA's operation in the Middle East. So if the CIA wants to hide their Listen, if the CIA wants to hide their investments in something they're doing overseas, why not use a bank that's good at hiding people's investments? So yes, you know that bank is hiding illegal drug money, illegal arms money, illegal everything money for racketeers and all kinds of criminal organizations. And that's why you pick them, because they're really good at hiding money, and you want them to hide your money as well. So you're in bed with the devil. Marshall reports that Bates, in particular, had a personal touch when it came to dealing with the CIA. He was even seen taking CIA officers into his private office to handle their checks. Sitting on the board of directors for Intra Bank was Kamal Adham, the head of Saudi intelligence. By the way, oh my God, the United States government, the Bushes in particular, and the Saudis, major thing that came up during 9/11 and the Saudis, and why certain Saudi businessmen and oil businessmen were flown out of the country on 9/11 when nobody else was allowed to fly. Do you remember hearing that? I remember hearing that. Maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Do you remember the stink that happened? Some people actually reported how it was weird that only the Saudis were allowed to fly after 9/11, because we're in business with the Saudis. Always have been in business with the Saudis. All right. And you don't need to understand why or how. Just remember that, gee, we're in business with the Saudis and only the Saudis get to fly on 9/11, that kind of stuff. If that's the case, maybe I'm remembering it wrong. Honestly, maybe I'm remembering it wrong. I don't think I am. It's been a long time, longer than you think, but that's what I remember. Big stink about the Saudis and about the Bushes in particular with the Saudis. All right. A later key player in the Iran-Contra, the BCCI affair, and numerous other covert activities. According to the Congressional BCCI report, Adnan was the CIA's principal liaison for the entire Middle East from the 60s through 1979. So the CIA was involved with these guys who were all involved with mobs and illegal money and moving transactions. The CIA also wanted to hide money, so they got involved with these people, and maybe we can no longer distinguish who the good guys and the bad guys are. That's the gist. If you're in bed with and making money with these people and hiding your cash along with their cash and making sums of money, it's not a stretch to see that maybe you start to lose sight of who are the good guys and the bad guys. Intra Bank was identified by American law enforcement as being a major laundromat and source of funding for the global drug trade, and a sizable portion of which was based in Lebanon. Intra Bank was identified by American law enforcement as a major launder of global drug trade money, a sizable portion of which was based in Lebanon, and CIA is doing business with that bank. Maybe you see a conflict of interest, maybe you don't. This was thanks to the country's position as a key node in the famed French connection, as Lebanon was a major source of hashish, raw opium, and even refined heroin that was destined for black markets in Europe and North America. Don't even get me started about how we took over the opium fields recently, not too long ago, in Afghanistan, and how suddenly right after that we had a huge opium epidemic in America, and every pharmacy in the world was pushing drugs to get people addicted to opioids. And we're like, oh my God, we got to stop this. Well, gee, we have a history of making money in hashish and raw opium and whatever. And so, yeah, if we took over the opium fields in the world, we're probably going to make some money. But that's crazy and raw speculation, mostly speculation, as this chapter will end with. Am I moving too fast? Am I being crazy? I'm being a little crazy. I sound crazy. According to a CIA report, Corsican organized crime figures allied with Curie, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, had made inroads into the highest levels of the French government, industry, and society, including the cabinet, police, and the military. Organized crime getting involved with the cabinet, so your government, police, and military. But I'm sure that was just raw speculation. Probably not true. Probably not true. It is probably totally true. Anyways, Curie also enjoyed protection from Israel. James Adey, an agent of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, or FBN, assigned to the Middle East, reported that the drug lord had provided thousands of guns to Israel, and that the country had provided the contacts and money that enabled Curie to move narcotics across Europe. Illegal drug running and gun running happens all the time, has happened all through our country, and most of the time, even if we have congressional hearings and the public hears about it, America gets bored with the details. At the end of the day, all you know is that people are making a frick ton of money illegally, and then those same people will turn around and throw your ass in jail for committing petty crimes in America. And they're making crimes, allegedly, that are disgusting amounts of money, changing their entire family's history forever, and then throwing your ass in jail because you smoked pot on the weekend. Do you see the hypocrisy of these systems? Massive levels of corruption at the highest levels with massive drug money, and then busting you for smoking pot on the weekend. Anyways, intriguingly, another figure implicated by the FBN is in the flow of drugs from Lebanon to Europe was the banker Edmund Safra, whose connection to BCCI, Iran-Contra, and figures like Robert Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, as discussed in Chapter 7. Jeffrey Epstein, name drop, not Charlie Epstein, Jeffrey Epstein, Charlie Kirk. I'm going to mention this. Whenever you see these names, I believe it leads to modern day, because Jeffrey Epstein's not that long ago. Charlie Kirk was pushing for publishing of Jeffrey Epstein's connections. Who is he connected with? All of these people, the bankers, the governments, the officials that are involved in laundering money, illegally drugs, also allegedly. Thank goodness I'm confusing to you, because if I was making this super clear to you, I'd probably just get shot. Because again, if you make it super easy and people could follow it, they'd be like, that guy needs to die. He's making it too easy. If it sounds like I'm rambling and a madman and half my comments are, dude, slow the hell down. What do you need, Adderall? Okay, if that's what your comment is, I'm safe. I'm safe, because they'll never want to kill me, because they'll be like, people just think that guy's a nutbag. He just needs to take less caffeine, and they won't listen to him. So that's good. Intra Bank's peculiarities made a little more sense when one considers that for bankers and organized criminals alike, there is often money to be made on both sides of any given conflict. That part I highlighted just because someday we're going to talk about the banks that bankrolled two sides of a major war, funded both sides to fight each other, and then raked in the money as both sides decimated each other and then had to pay the banks back. And the bankers love when nations go to war. When two tribes go to war. Sorry, I digress on pop culture all the time. Anyways, when two tribes go to war, bankers make money. Keep that in mind. All right. How are we doing on time? About a half hour? Okay, keep going. Bankers and tankers, the world of Bruce Rappaport. While he was President Ronald Reagan's director of the CIA, William Casey. Let's just stop for a moment. Now we're getting to more modern. Are you paying more attention? I know that name, Ronald Reagan. Holy shit. So while he was President Ronald Reagan's director of the CIA, William Casey maintained, much to the chagrin of many in the agency. So a lot of people in the CIA wasn't really excited about the fact that the CIA director was doing what? He had an informal intelligence apparatus composed of his close friends and associates. Nicknamed the Hardy Boys, this group lacked CIA clearances, but its members had their own back door, so to speak, to Langley. They would ride upstairs in Casey's own elevator. Among this clique was McHugel, who managed to be appointed deputy director of the CIA before his history of dubious stock trading caught up with him. So what is this telling you? People who are not part of the CIA are part of the CIA director's private intel group. And they're people who are names that are associated with organized crime, mob, banking industry that's laundering the money. And hey, look, these people don't work for the CIA, but they have a back door to my office. They can come in and talk to me anytime because we're doing business, bitches. We're doing business internationally. It's not show friends, it's show business. That's a great line. All right. Other members who will also be discussed in later chapters of this book include John Sheehan and Robert B. Anderson. Sheehan, anyways, I'm pronouncing that wrong. Shaheen, an oil trader, played a role in the October surprise affair, while Robert Anderson's career veered from being a prominent figure in the Eisenhower administration to being disbarred from money laundering in 1980s. Somebody who's a prominent figure in the United States government, Eisenhower's administration, is disbarred from money laundering in the 1980s. Why? Because you cannot distinguish the guys who work for the mob and the guys who work for the government. That's the takeaway. One of Casey's most important friends, however, was Bruce Rappaport. We're going to hear a lot about Rappaport now. Now, across the latter half of the 20th century, Rappaport left a string of business deals that were mind-numbing in their complexity. That's a key takeaway. If you feel like you're checking out and you can't follow the breadcrumbs in the trail, that's because it's mind-numbing in complexity, and that is by design. They don't want you to follow the trail. They want it confusing. They want to hide it between moving money on a whole bunch of different companies. They want to hide their associations. They want to have people have accidents if you start to make the connections. And so it's by design that it's super complex and it's hard to get you to understand. So stop trying to memorize the names. All you got to figure out is how many times do I have to hear member of the mob, member of the mafia associated with U.S. intelligence, Israeli intelligence, moving illegal guns and drugs and whatever. How many times do you need to hear that? Do you need to know the names, or you just need to know, I think we might be involved in illegal drug running and illegal arms trades and shit like that. Is it far-fetched to think that's happening? It doesn't matter if you can point fingers at the names. In fact, for your own safety, don't point fingers. I digressed again. All right. So where was I at? Mind-numbing in their complexity and tied to fraud, intelligence-linked bust-out operations, and backroom dealings, all of which were facilitated by a sophisticated web of interlocking shipping companies, banks, oil companies, mines, and numerous other holdings. Yes, they hide the money behind a lot of shit, and it takes books like this and naming names and pulling the threads for you to even have a chance to follow it. And at the end of the day, who cares? If you can follow the thread, all you're going to do is convince yourself that, yeah, they were right, but you're not going to be able to do anything about it. You can't do dick about it. You're just going to be able to bitch and complain and become an old bastard like me who's like, get off my lawn. That's what you feel like when you see all these people. You can't do shit about it. You just fucking get off my lawn or get out of my country or whatever the hell you want to say. You get angry. Which is why we try to add a little levity into a very serious situation. Rappaport and Casey were sometimes co-participants in these activities, some of which predated Casey's time at the CIA. During the 1980s, they were also known to be golfing buddies and made frequent visits together to the Deepdale Golf Club in Long Island. When Rappaport visited Deepdale, the golf club, writes Alan Block, the author of an exhaustive study on his life and times, his chauffeur was often Luis Filardo, an alleged associate of New York area mobsters. Oh, wait a minute. What's the key takeaway? People in the CIA going golfing buddies with mobsters. That's interesting. Probably don't need to know the names. Just keep the high-level idea in your mind. By the late 1980s, if not earlier, he was tied to Russian organized crime interest. Oh, that's interesting. Well, who cares about the names? Now we've got some allegations that the CIA director is involved with Russian mob. It's probably just a coincidence that he's golfing buddies and associates with a bunch of mobsters. Probably just a coincidence. I'm sure it had nothing to do with anything and didn't taint American politics. All right. Including Simeon Migilovich, the boss of bosses of Russian crime syndicates who make several appearances later in this book with a position on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Mogilevich, can't even pronounce it. The boss of bosses will appear later in the book, and he has a position on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list. Mogilevich is described by the Bureau as a leader in weapons trafficking, contract murders, extortion, drug trafficking, prostitution, and on an international scale. What's the key takeaway? He's golfing buddies with Rappaport and all these other people and mobsters. And anyways, you don't need to know all the connections. You just need to say, why do these names all seem to be intertied with each other? Interestingly, it is quite possible that Rappaport had been introduced to Mogilevich by none other than Robert Maxwell, who by the 1980s had become a key business partner of Mogilevich's and facilitated Mogilevich's entry into the Israeli and U.S. financial systems. Oh, mobsters helping mobsters get into the banking industry. Well, that's interesting. Do we need to know the names? I don't know. Do you want to know the names? I don't want to know the names. I just want to know the high-level details. Another contact of Mogilevich's crime networks was the aforementioned banker Edmund Safra, who was acquainted with both Maxwell and Rappaport. I'm hoping we can get through this in the next, we can get through this in the amount of time we have left, I think. In the early 1960s, Inter Maritime Supplies owned a stake. So that's the name of a company. So in the 60s, Inter Maritime Supplies owned a stake in London and Overseas Freighters, another company. It is worth mentioning that London and Overseas was formed by the Kulakundis family with their cousins, Mavrolian family, as will be noted in chapter 15. The Mavrolians were themselves connected to the circles around Jeffrey Epstein and Ghilaine Maxwell. Oh, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghilaine Maxwell. Now, why do we care? Ghilaine Maxwell is in prison right now. Jeffrey Epstein would be in prison right now if he hadn't decided to suicide himself to shut his mouth about what he knows about all these people, is what I'm saying. All these people that they're in bed with, all these governments that they're in bed with, all these secrets that they know, all these mobsters that they know, is the reason why Jeffrey Epstein had a change of heart and decided to kill himself, despite the fact that it was reported that he was happy and smiling with his lawyers, like right before he killed himself. Happy and smiling with his lawyers, and then, he just had a sudden bad night and hung himself. My ass. But anyways, you buy that if you want to. Anyways, and the whole Ghislaine Maxwell thing is not over, and the Jeffrey Epstein files that Charlie Kirk that Charlie Kirk was pressing to be released, the Epstein files that he was pressing to have released and open to the public to see who was in bed, literally and figuratively, with Jeffrey Epstein. That's maybe one of the reasons why Charlie Kirk got assassinated. But that's if you believe that people actually kill people to hide their involvement in organized crime and illegal activities. That's only if you believe that happens. If you don't believe that people get killed and assassinated to hide their connections to organized crime and illegal activities, then it was probably just a random 20-year-old who is whatever. We're going to talk, by the way, soon about patsies and what patsies are and whether or not Tyler Robinson is a patsy. And in case you don't know that, you check into Deep Devils. We're going to cover that coming up. I know this is super deep. It's not for everybody. This channel's not for everybody. Not everything I do is deep, by the way. All right. So where are we at? Contact information for Bluey Mavrolian and his son, Nicholas Mavrolian, or Mavrolian, Gianfranco's half-brother, can be found in Epstein's Black Book of Contacts. Oh, these mobsters, guys, these guys connected with this organization, these mobster connections, are in Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book of Contacts. Guess what we're trying to get exposed right now? Who's all in Jeffrey Epstein's books of contacts? I bet you some people on that list who have a lot of money, don't want somebody with the clout of a Charlie Kirk pushing to have Jeffrey Epstein's Black Book of Contacts published to the public. That's just speculation. I'm sure it's just really just a liberal versus conservative thing, and liberals committed an act of war against conservatives. That's what's happening in America, not covering up your connections to organized crime and drug money and illegal activities and arms money. And that's probably not what happened. Weiss Credit, and we're skipping ahead. Weiss Credit was identified by the U.S. State Department as a bank utilized by numerous Italians involved with organized crime to hide their money from financial authorities in their home country. Oh, so the U.S. Department U.S. State Department finds that a bank is involved in hiding Italian organized crime money. That's a shock. Zoppi would wind up with a 5-year prison sentence in 1975 when Weiss Credit lost $150 million of their depositors' money due to fraud and mismanagement in high-risk speculative operations, maybe like drug running. I don't know. I get it if it's hard to follow. Just follow the high-level shit. Do your best. Put this on while you go make toast if you want to check out, so I at least get the watch time. That would be great. Buy a copy of the book just to support the cause. That would also be great. Over the decades, there has been a slow and steady trickle of news articles in major publications that examine Bruce Rappaport. Over the decades, there's been a slow and steady trickle of news articles and major publications that examine the actions of Bruce Rappaport. In 1988, for example, the New York Times published an article on Rappaport entitled "A Secret Emperor of Oil and Shipping." The article described how Rappaport had, quote, developed a reputation for both openness and secrecy. On one hand, Mr. Rappaport, who is said by some associates to be a billionaire, sponsors golf and tennis tournaments and gives huge sums to hosts of charities, especially medical and Jewish ones. On the other hand, former and current business associates say Rappaport is involved in hundreds of companies registered in remote places like Liberia and Panama to run his banking and shipping and oil empire. By the way, number one trick in this country, number one trick for sheeple Americans is do something good like donate to a charity. But we help children. We have a charity for children. Oh, praise them. They're so cool. They help children. Yeah, that's what you do when you want to launder most of your money and do other shit. You're like, well, how can we be bad? We help children. We help children. How can we be bad? Liberia's shipping registry system also has some unique characteristics. It was managed not Liberia's shipping registry system also has some unique characteristics. It was managed not by Liberia. Liberia's shipping registry is not managed by Liberia, but was overseen by international banks located in Washington, D.C. Why is Washington, D.C.? Why, for God's sake, is international banks in Washington, D.C. managing Liberia's banking system? Or the Liberia shipping registry system. Why? The longtime controller of International Bank, George Olmsted, would end up in the periphery of the BCCI affair, later discussed in Chapter 7. Do we even want to get into it? It's just going to be more mobsters and more bankers involved in organized crime getting busted from time to time while pretending like this shit's not going on. The Mossad goes to Rome. The Israeli Mossad. So in 1967, Gershon Perez, a brother of Shimon Peres, joined the board of Centro Mondiale Commerciale, the Italian subsidiary of Permindex. That's the name we're going to mostly focus on, is Permindex. Also CMC, Centro, you're going to make me say it again, Mondiale Commerciale. Commerciale. How's my Italian? Commerciale. All right, so there you go. Ostensibly, that's a big word in English. The purpose of Permindex CMC was to maintain what was effectively a permanent World's Fair, a centralized site where businessmen could display their wares, deals could be made, and important corporations could maintain their offices. On the back end, however, Permindex CMC was tied to various covert networks, usually meaning your intelligence agencies. What first placed Garrison on the trail of Permindex, for example, was the presence of Clay Shaw, an apparent CIA contract agent on their board. So a member of CIA, they're saying, allegedly, it's all speculative, of course, a member of the CIA is on the board of these banking institutes, which are designed to have offices for bankers to come in and do shady business deals in private, like some say. Some presidents met with Saudis at these banking institutes, these places. They have these backroom places for big heads of states to come and do backroom deals with each other. There's pictures of those backroom deals, but maybe they're not. I'm getting way too much past my wheelhouse. Let's just get out of that. Louise Mortimer Bloomfield has often been described as the founder of Permindex and sometimes as its dominant shareholder. This seems to be an inaccurate picture of his role in the complex, as Bloomfield was Permindex's attorney. In his capacity, he was responsible for coordinating all of the different players involved who were scattered across multiple continents. He does not appear to have owned stock in or of his own in Permindex or CMC. Instead, he acted as a proxy for particular interests, effectively hiding their identities. So as a lawyer, he was helping people from multiple countries come in and do business in this hidden backroom deals where big people, big amounts of money need to move illegal shit through banks. They come and he just helps them as a lawyer keep their identities hidden as they come do backroom deals in the banking industry. That's kind of what they're saying. Their stock was held in his name. So their stock, these people hide their stock in his name, so it looks all legit on books, allegedly. And he occupied their spots on the he occupied their spots on the board. So he goes and talks for them as he holds their positions. Yeah, it's complicated. I get it. Shit, I need a fan that's getting hotter than hell in here. Maybe it's me because I'm getting pissed off. Let's hope the microphone doesn't pick up that fan. Whew. All right. With the links between Permindex, CMC, and the world of intelligence, it is unsurprising that rumors have circulated for decades that Bloomfield was, during the Second World War, a member of the OSS, the precursor to the CIA. Yeah, the fan wasn't going to work. I think I was going to be too loud. All right, I'm just going to have to roast. I think we're almost done. We're at 45 minutes. I think I can do this in less than 15 minutes, and probably most of you aren't going to watch this, to be honest with you, but I'm going to keep going because some of you really are. You're all in. Bloomfield did hold membership in the number of elite organizations, including the most venerable order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, but we help children. That makes you good. You help children. That makes you good. Then you can do whatever you want with mobsters' money and you're good. You help children. How can I be bad? I'm in the most venerable order of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, a British they're very chivalrous order established by royal charter in the 1880s as something of a Protestant counterpart to the Catholic sovereign military order of Malta, better known as the Knights of Malta. So again, just nice, benevolent, chivalrous organizations who happen to have mobsters and banking and intel figures who are part of these organizations, but they help children, so it's okay. Bloomfield was also attached to a number of Zionist organizations, helping with the rise of Israel. Later in life, Bloomfield corresponded with George H.W. Bush, including while Bush was serving as the director of the CIA. Later in life, Bloomfield corresponded with Bush, while Bush was serving as the director of the CIA. The letters indicate that the two first met at a meeting at a Canadian embassy in Beijing in 1975. I'm sure that meeting was very, very above the board and all legit and had nothing to do with backdoor business deals. I'm sure of it. Rothschild was also a business partner of Tibor Rosenbaum. The two had organized the Israel Corporation, or Israel's largest investment company, designed to encourage large-scale private investment in Israel. These people go out and recruit support Israel, invest all your money in Israel, so we can move your money in Israel and we can fund things in Israel. And anyways. When it was discovered in 1974 that Rosenbaum had built the company to the tune of $60 million, the Israeli government linked up a small handful of the country's leading banks to participate in the efforts to prevent its liquidation. One of these banks was the Bank of Leumi. I don't know that I go into that much. I'm not sure why I have that. Anyways, Rothschild himself appears all over Bloomfield's correspondences and was clearly intimately involved with Permindex CMC's activities. Other partners in this consortium included Husky Oil Company, which was affiliated with the aforementioned mob-linked Rimrock Tidelands Oil Company, and New Continental Oil Company, with which Israel Continental Oil set up joint ventures in Canada. The president of New Continental was Frank Kaftel, an organized crime associate and stock manipulator originally from Cleveland, the stomping grounds of Mo Dalitz and CMC investor Nate Dolan. Mobsters involved with bankers. Can you tell which ones are which? The Federal Bureau of Narcotics documents identify Kaftel as a close associate of Beoni Joy Ziccarelli, the aforementioned mobster and businessman who had been involved in running arms to Israel. Illegal arms trades, mobsters, bankers, mobsters, bankers. Can you tell which one is which? The Miami group, as mentioned above, maintained ties to organized crime interest and was also connected to the family of companies that was partnered with the Israel Continental Oil Corporation, PEC. On the other hand, was a primary conduit for the investment of American capital into nascent Israel industries. To quote this person, described as the largest American private investor in Israel, PEC was formed in 1926 as an instrument through which American Jews could render material assistance, money and assets, to production enterprises in Palestine. And so this was, again, funding the uprise of Israel to declare independence and break free. So they were funding that with some quasi-legal things of supplying arms and money to Israel and prepare them for declaring their independence. In only the period from 1950 to 59, its capital increased from 70%. PEC assets totaled $19 million in 1961. It has numerous daughter companies, banks and agencies, and shares in other companies. Having grown to gigantic proportions, PEC has its tentacles in all the key branches of Israel's economy. PEC is linked with leading financial and industrial monopolies in the United States, such as Wall Street bankers, Lehman Brothers, Kuhn, Loeb and Company, one of the 8 largest financial groups in the United States. The Mellon Group of Pittsburgh, Cabot Lodge Group of Boston, and the Hanna Group of Cleveland. Again, Wall Street bankers, mobsters, Wall Street bankers, mobsters. Just high level. This particular network of individuals and institutions is complex and convoluted. So stop trying to learn all the names, or if you want to, buy the book. Yet, what is clear is that there was something of an Israel, Italy, France, Canada axis that was tied directly into hot money networks in the Caribbean and the flow of capital from the West into Israel itself and to the outflows of raw materials like diamonds from the third world. Once this foreign investment, generally from America and Canadian sources, was in Israel, it went to work building up various industries. It appears then that the logical successor to the earlier efforts to raise money, supplies, and weapons for the Zionist parliamentary groups in mandatory Palestine was now all about building up the capacities of the new state. What that's saying is, in the early stages before Israel declared its independence, lots of money was flowing from the West, from America, into Israel to fight and declare its independence. But that money flow never stopped once Israel got established, and now money continues to flow from the West into Israel, which means that we are continually in bed with Israel, which is why some would argue we have such a connection between Israel and the United States because of money. But that's crazy. It's probably because we're doing the right thing and we're just really good people and we only do the right thing here. Not about money. We wouldn't do stuff for money. This particular angle emerged during the investigation into the mysterious death. The mysterious death? Say it isn't so. People involved in banking and mobsters and money and illegal drugs and gun running and governments have mysterious deaths? Bitch, please. Mattei, whose plane exploded in October 1962, Mattei was the head of the ENI, the dominant oil and gas firm in Italy that supplied, among other things, petroleum to NATO and the U.S. Sixth Fleet. In the early 1960s, however, Mattei had embarked on something of a path different from the status quo of Cold War politics. He sought to sign oil agreements with the Soviet Union and with Algerian and Egyptian interests who were at the time opposed to Israel. And then his plane blew up. With such a pivot taking place, theories that Mattei's death was less than accidental have existed for decades, but have also led to multiple official inquiries into the incident. So, yes, shit happens. Your plane sometimes just has a malfunction and shit just blows up when you change your allegiances and you start talking about going a different way with your money. Shit happens. Planes blow up. And I'm sure a large number of you would say, yes, that's correct. Shit happens. And now we've concluded with where we started. Such conclusions are at best speculative. Yet, what's certain and undeniable is that much of the wartime OSS and CIA, as well as Israel's intelligence services, operated in close proximity to and were effectively indistinguishable from organized crime. And that's the key takeaway from today. The devil is in the details. Thanks for listening.